Hi, everyone, and welcome to the fifth installment of our Pivot Artist Interview Series. This week, we're going behind the scenes with Sam Honanie. She's the exhibit manager, and she's also the bookstore and publications manager for Museum of Northern Arizona. So thank you for joining us, Sam.
Thanks.
So I'm just going to jump right into questions. So how did you join the Pivot Show, and what is your exact role?
Oh gosh. So that's kind of a long story, but basically I graduated from college in 2016. I went back to school as an adult, like already a parent, had 2 kids, graduated. And then I found a job at the museum. So I work as the bookstore and publications manager. I have a degree in English, so it was kind of like a marrying of the 2 things that I had been doing, working in retail, training on that side, and then working with books. And a lot of my emphasis in school was working with books about Native American literature. So a lot of the things that they were talking about and selling in the bookstore, I already had pretty good familiarity with. So it was really a nice fit. And then I'm Hopi and Diné, so a lot of the cultural stuff, I'm like, oh, I'm familiar. I know a little bit about that. So I started working there at M&A in 2016 here in Flagstaff. And I really, honestly, for myself, I credit my boss a lot with really kind of being the impetus for like a lot of stuff that have gone into place. And her name's Cindy DeAngelis, and she's just amazing because she's actually the one who got Dwayne's items in the store at M&A before I even got there. So when I started working at M&A, she's the one who introduced me to him. And his items were in the bookstore before I even got there. And really the relationship between the 2 of them working together and then her introducing me, and it kind of just evolved from that point. They had the initial event at Tafu, so it was Dwayne Landis and then the other smaller group of artists. And it was kind of funny because on the night of the show, it was the Hopi show preview. So I was working and Dwayne was like, hey, could you watch my booth for a few minutes before, while my nephew gets here? And I was like, I don't know, I guess so. So actually the first night of the Pivot, I couldn't go. I wanted to go and he had told me about it, but I had to be at work. And it was kind of neat because I was like, hey, I helped out. Like, I watched your booth. I don't know if he remembers that, but that was kind of where it went from there. And a lot of people had a lot of interest in it. And just from us working on the apparel and different products, it kind of kickstarted conversations that I had. And for me, and just having him explain, like, this is what it is, this is my idea, it really just started a process of, I call it planting seeds. So I talked to Amber, our registrar, like, what would it take? And then I talked to our public programs manager, Amelia, and then I talked to marketing and Cindy, and like I just got all these different pieces together from our side and just was really like, what would we have to do to make this happen? Because it was on a much smaller scale. So really bringing in everybody and kind of bringing it full circle. And I think that's kind of where I kind of got hooked into it, where I was like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. And the meaning of it is so inspiring. So I think a lot of the people who were and are still at M&A were like very supportive. Tony Thibodeau, who was the co-curator on our museum side, big supporter. Our former director, Carrie, giving us the opportunity to actually bring it in. And just everybody who worked on it, I think it's been a really amazing thing. I mean, Josh, who worked in actually installing it and helping plan it all out. Jody putting everything up. I'm naming a lot of people, but like everybody played a part in it. And, working at a nonprofit, you're like, everybody is essential and everybody needs to work together to make things happen. So I think for me, the collaborative process was where I really helped out, I would say. And that's where I continue to help out, where I'm like, all right, get this piece from over here, get this piece from over here. And it kind of all just fell into place.
Well, yes, you've done a lot of the behind the scenes stuff with us, making sure we have the information we need, helping send us, like, be the go-between and send us information. And that's why we'll have, like, beautiful labels, and we've got the right paint colors, and we've got all the things that make it look so good.
Yeah.
So our second question then is, what does pivot mean to you?
I had to think about this because, I mean, there are a lot of meanings behind the exhibit, and oh my gosh, Joanne and Landis, like, just listening to them talk and just like all the different layers. I think for myself, and this is kind of the main one that we really express to a lot of people, is that it's kind of where we're at as contemporary Indigenous people, and having the ability to live our lives for a lot of people, it's a very private thing. So our cultural side, for myself, that's like Hopi, and to another extent like Dene, and like for Landis and Dwayne, Hopi and Dene also, and being able to go back and forth and having the ability to be there for our family, be there for our communities. But then for a lot of us who are choosing to live where we live in cities and other places for work and other reasons, having the ability to go from that kind of world to this world, to where we're, you know, working in museums, working in tattoo shops, working at hospitals, and, you know, kind of allowing those things to like guide us and uplift us, but then also bringing in what we have to offer professionally. And I think for myself, like, that's so important. I don't necessarily talk about a lot of like the traditional stuff. For me, that's a little bit more private, so I don't share a ton about that. But then being able to bring those teachings and then kind of bringing that insight into the work that I do and helping it kind of shape and, you know, move me along in my professional and educational life. Yeah. So that's one part. And then I think the other thing too is that I really appreciate that they are very open about is having the ability to change directions. So when you're pivoting, you're going from maybe this side and going over here. And for myself in the recent years, that's been, I think, a really huge lesson. And I think when we're sharing that with younger people and the wider audience, I think we're giving people the ability to say, like, yeah, I was on this wrong path, but now I'm over here. And giving the people the opportunity to say, I learned all these lessons from these things that were going on over here, but then I made the conscious decision and the effort to change where I'm going. And I think that is really empowering because it really speaks to, I would say, like, you know, telling your own story and being the person who takes control of the direction that you're going in. So I think for the youth, I mean, when we did youth programs with kids at M&A who were maybe struggling with some different things and at risk, and having Dwayne and Landis be very open and honest and saying, this is the path that I was on and it wasn't working for me. It wasn't great. So I put in the effort and I changed, and now I'm here in this position. And if that's something that you want to do, you can do that too. So for me, I think that's really rewarding to share that with other people. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. You kind of touched on this before, but I think your role in both working at M&A and with this pivot exhibit really exemplifies a lot of the crossover in the heritage field. So I think one of my questions is, you know, how did you get into the heritage and library and museum and sales field?
Oh,
and just like, how do all of those feel like they kind of fit together? Because there is so much overlap in a lot of those. And I think a lot of museums now especially are kind of realizing that there are so many ways that these overlap, and each person is doing a lot of these different roles at the same time. So if you could speak to some of that,
Yeah,
how that feels.
I mean, I think this is something that I'm really I get involved in a lot of conversations. I'm like, well, actually, let me just jump in here. And I think it just really goes back to my passion for reading. So when I was a kid, I didn't grow up out home. I actually grew up in Las Vegas, Nevada, because my dad was in the Air Force. So we kind of, that was in a sense like our lifestyle. But then at the same time, I would spend my summers home. So I would be with relatives and I would be learning from them. And I think I really did have a mix of both worlds. And I think finding that I had the ability to make decisions at M&A was a big confidence booster for me to speak up and share that with other people, like self-representation and, you know, telling our own stories. So after I graduated from NAU here in Flagstaff, having studied English and then now hopefully finishing my master's in library and information science through the University of Arizona, I think all that education is really intertwined with the work that I'm doing with M&A, with literature and buying books, and then investing in artists. And I think that's something that I'm really passionate about and that I try to share with other people, especially people who are in positions of power. In a lot of cases, those are the people who are actually spending money and buying products. And I like to kind of liken it to the idea of shopping local. If you're going to buy something or you want something that's Native American or, you know, Hopi, Diné, Zuni, like you probably want to go right to the source. It just makes sense because you're investing in that person. You're getting an item that really has a lot of meaning and they can explain it to you. And you are supporting a community. So when you show that piece to another person, you can say, I got it from this person. This is what it means. This is how they explained it. And I think that goes a long ways. And we are at a point in time kind of with Pivot to where we have the ability to make those decisions. I think with the internet and the ability for us to connect so easily with other people, I figure why not? Like reach out to them, send an email. And I think the work that we're doing at M&A is really kind of in a long tradition of doing that. But nowadays, in some ways, it's a little bit easier because you don't actually have to go to one of our festivals. You can, I mean, we obviously want you to come to our festivals, but you know, the information that we share, we have the ability to connect directly with the actual people. And I think that's so important. Is that, I don't know, I kind of went all the way around.
No, that's perfect. We want to know all that behind the scenes stuff.
Yeah.
And this is maybe just drilling down a little, but we've been asking all of the artists about what art means to them right now during these crazy times. And so we're kind of asking you more generally, like, what do you think the museum field or libraries, like, what do you think these cultural institutions mean right now, at least to you?
Oh gosh. So I think so my interest is a lot in libraries, and now I'm finding, wow, like I'm having the opportunity to do a lot of different things with museum work. I think the connection between Indigenous people and museums has had a long and not necessarily great history. So we are at a unique point in time to where we have the ability to, you know, start speaking up. And as more and more of us are getting our education and having the ability to come into these roles fully prepared from the professional side and then from the cultural side to say, this is what I think about this matter, and this is what my community has to say about this thing in particular. I think that's really important. And I think right now, as far as art goes, when you walk into like a local museum or like a local library, you kind of want it to be something that the community is proud of. Of course, it's important to, you know, have the opportunity to expose them to like wider works of art, or, you know, teach them about different artists or different expressions. But I think it's really nice that exhibits like this and other exhibits in the region are really claimed by the community. And I think this is one where people came in and they were like, oh my gosh, I'm seeing this for the first time, and I'm seeing myself in this exhibit. And I'm proud to say that Pivot is something that does that. And I've seen it firsthand where kids walk in, my own children, and they see a skateboard deck on the wall in a museum, and they can say, I know what that means. That means something to me. Or I know the person who did that. That's really special. So it's kind of like a mirror. They have an opportunity to see through and look into another life way, maybe the culture of another artist like James Johnson, or, you know, something like for my kids seeing a work of Dwayne's and being like, oh my gosh, I understand that. I see myself in that. So I think for me, art in this time especially is providing not only a form of expression for people, but it's something that really nourishes kind of your soul, and that you have the opportunity to say, oh man, I like that and I appreciate it, and I'm going to support the person who's making that because it makes me feel good. Yeah.
So kind of along the same lines, but for you in this field, what role does diversity and representation and all of those things about, you know, the identity of the people within the museum and in this field and in the library field mean to you, and how that works?
I think I think it's really important. So when I first started working at the museum, and this is something I do talks about cultural appropriation, about literature, children's literature, and like a little bit into history and providing the backstory. But I think a lot of people are well-intentioned and they want to do the right thing, and they want to learn. And I think it's a little difficult for people to make good choices if they're not well informed. So I think what diversity does is it provides a wide variety of not only opinions and perspectives, but a wide variety of educational opportunities. So for myself, working with people who know a lot about, say, Grand Canyon art or biology, it helps inform me, and we have a fuller picture. And I think that's what I'm interested in when it comes to diversity, is really having the opportunity to learn from each other and being open to learning from each other. And with this kind of thing, with Pivot, I think it's provided me with a lot of opportunity, because I've not only learned more about, you know, other people's culture, but even my own culture. Like there are different little pieces that Dwayne has said, well, this means this. And I think it's nice because a lot of the artists who participate know where the line is, and they can say, I can share this with you. I'm choosing not to represent this for this reason. And I think you wouldn't have that if you didn't have diversity. So it really just provides a lot of opportunities for us to learn from each other and to really build on that mutual sense of respect. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good way of bringing together the stuff that we kind of talked about with Pivot, right? Like the traditional knowledge that bringing a diverse group of people in traditional knowledge, and then the professional knowledge about like well, this is what temperature you should have your storage at. And these are all the things.
Yeah.
Like you can bring together those two things
Yeah.
and balance them out.
Yeah.
So our last question is just, where do you see Pivot going? Because this isn't the end of the road. We're just a stopping point along the way. Where do you see it going? Where would you like it to go?
I really just want to be able to share it with more people. So we were lucky that Antoinette Thompson and Nunaba at Dina College kind of started that conversation with Dwayne, myself, and Landis, and it was able to go there, and we're like, yeah, awesome. We're like so happy. And then meeting Jeannie and meeting I'm drawing a blank. What's his name?
Jack.
Oh, Jack, I'm so sorry.
You knew it.
I love you. I knew it. And having the opportunity to meet them and really have those conversations and be like, this is what it is and this is what it means. I think that's, for me and myself, really important to me, is sharing it with other people. And then also, I think from like a personal perspective, I want to be able to say to younger Indigenous people, especially Hopi kids, Diné kids, and say, look at what we did. Like, it's here. It's gone to these different places. You are capable of so much. You can go and do even more than we did. And I think it's just, having the ability for us to say, come with us, come with us and go even further. And I think that's something that I was lucky enough to have that in my life with my grandparents and people, and say, you can do it. You can do whatever you want to do. Like, you just have to put in the hard work and you just can't give up. And I think that's what I want to express most and hopefully convey to younger generations, is that they have that ability. And with the things that we do and the places that we go, we can say, go even further. But I really would like to go to New York, that being said, and maybe DC. So I think the furthest east I've been is Iowa, so I want to go past Iowa. No, I did go to North Carolina. My little sister graduated from Duke, so I did go there one time. So I think that's where I'm at. That's where I'm at mentally. Yeah.
Well, we're really excited to see where it goes. Like Liz said, we're just a stepping stone, and we know that we're happy to be part of just like the beginning stages of this, and know that it has really great potential to just shock everyone.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Liz. And everybody there. I mean, it's been like me, Dwayne, and Landis are kind of like humble, or you can't say you're humble, but like a little country mouse, and we're like, whoa, this is so cool.
In the big time.
Yeah. We have fun.
Well, we're so happy that we got to talk to you today. We know how much you do, but I don't think the rest of the world gets to know how much you do for Pivot and coordinating everything and getting everyone in line and, making sure that the actual thing happens.
Yeah.
So we're happy to hear more from you and your backstory too.
Thank you. Yeah. In preparation, I kind of like asked Dwayne some questions. I was like, what do I say during an interview? And he was like, you know what you should do? And then he was like giving me tips and stuff. And he was like, and tell him about the paperwork, because I don't want to do any of that paperwork.
There's a lot of paperwork that no one realizes.
No, that's true.
Yes.
Yeah, but it's fun, and like I said, we're kind of just taking it one step at a time. It's awesome.
Yes. Well, thanks again for chatting with us. We also want to give another shout out again to the LPEA and our crowdfunding donors for supporting us and helping us bring Pivot to Center Southwest Studies. Keep up with all things Pivot at their Instagram page at pivot_skateboard_deck_exhibit. You can find Sam through those means if you want to connect and reach out in other ways. You can follow us at the center at Center SW Studies on Instagram. And look out for our Facebook and YouTube posts that show more features and more behind the scenes with the Pivot team and other Pivot artists.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.